Oh my gosh.
All right, we're just gonna go here, and then it'll be in my feed instead of the group, and I'll have to share it to the group.
Okay, it's still saying you guys are live on my end.
Within the event?
I don't know.
At this point, we're just gonna go with it.
Yeah.
So anyway, sorry for the technical difficulties. Obviously, there's a first time for everything, but we're very happy to have you here, Mia.
Yes, thank you. It's an honor to be here with you guys.
This is Mark. I don't think you've actually.
Hi, Mark. No, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Mia is a great friend of mine from Guelph and lived in our neighborhood there. And she has, well, how about I let you introduce yourself and how you came into this kind of mindfulness space, because I don't want to miss stuff on the wording. But tell us about who you are.
Sure.
And how you kind of got into this area.
Absolutely. Yeah, so my background's in law, and I've been working in this field for over 10 years. And during the pandemic, I was working full-time corporately, juggling being a mom, finishing an undergrad degree, and really pursuing my passions. And unfortunately, I had some health challenges that really threw me for a loop. And at that time, my anxiety was at its peak. So eventually that led to complete burnout. And I really was searching for some sort of tool, some avenue that could really help me balance my career, my passion, and my health. And that's when I turned to mindfulness. So really, I just dove in head first, like I typically do with everything. And I started educating myself on that. So I attended some courses at McMaster University. So I hold certificates in the fundamentals of mindfulness and advanced practices and principles. I have a concurrent disorder certificate from the University of Toronto and the Center of Addiction and Mental Health, as well as certificates from the Crisis and Trauma Resource Institute in mindfulness counseling strategies, cognitive behavioral tools for thinking differently, anxiety practical interventions, and trauma-informed care. So it's my passion for helping people and for advocating for mental health and wellness that really drives me. So that's where my journey began. That's right. That's on top of my full-time job being a mom. I'm also an active volunteer in the community, and I sit as a Youth Justice Committee member on the John Howard Society. So I work with youth in the justice system as well.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Well, we're super happy to have you here. I know for us in our family, we are kind of new to this mindfulness space, but I'll let Mark maybe share a little bit about how it's impacted him over the last few months and why we thought it was relevant to kind of come together and share together today.
Yeah, and again, thanks for joining us, Mia, and I hope, well, I know you'll provide a ton of value for the people listening, and I think what will be the replay as we figured out our technological challenges. But to Jody's point, it's an interesting facet for me as having worked in corporate Canada, all the way up from shaking fries at McDonald's to being the president of a company and volunteer board members and everywhere in between. And the struggle that's been consistent through all of that as I've matured, perhaps, but definitely aged, is that battle with anxiety. And in every role, it's that pressure that leads to stress, that leads to anxiety. And mindfulness for me, which is why I love the idea of doing this today, is new. And it's something that I wish I had decades ago.
Yes.
So just a little bit of my background, dealing with anxiety through the pandemic, lots of loss in our family of father, brother, loss of jobs, starting a new business. That anxiety grew to the point where I needed to seek out help. And I finally did that. And I got some professional help in counseling. And one of the things they put me on was John Teasdale, I believe is his name, one of the authors of the Mindful Workbook.
Okay.
And it's mindful cognitive behavior therapy. And what it does is it really just teaches you how to live in the present and gives you exercises to be present. So your mind doesn't go to the future and you live in the future and you imagine what's going to happen. And if you have high anxiety, you imagine the negative pieces of what could happen, not the positive.
Yeah.
And I didn't even know this mindfulness thing existed. So I guess my first question to ask you is, like, where do you see this for business executives today, and how could they put it into their work life to get that balance?
Yeah, so I think especially when working as an executive or in corporations and high-powered jobs with that stress, as you said, learning to balance that life, like mindfulness really is a tool to help you manage life, to manage your emotions, to manage your feelings, and to find that balance. So what it can do is really to help us step into that, to recognize and be aware of our feelings and our thoughts and really ground ourselves, so that we can move forward. So in that world, or all of us individually, we're at a loss for that balance right now, even more so now, I find, during the pandemic, because we all have so many balls that we're trying to juggle. And as you had said before, Mark, I wish we all kind of had these tools before. Like if we were able to recognize and accept that what we're feeling is okay, to say, this is what I'm feeling. How do I work through this feeling? How do I shift from this emotion to another one? Then we can really learn to regulate our nervous system and find that calm. So you'll see this kind of as a pattern moving forward. A lot of corporations are doing training like this through their EAP programs, hosting webinars or Zoom events based on mindfulness. It's a tool that can really help stress reduction. And I think that's one of the key things, and that's everybody's looking for that right now.
Yeah, I find, at least in my business, the struggle I have with some business owners, I'm trying to train behaviors that will allow leaders to better lead their teams, which ultimately will pay off in profitability, but there's not that instant return. So it takes a lot of faith out of the corporate leaders to invest in training like that. It's measurable, but it takes time. I would imagine that's a hurdle with getting organizations to buy into mindfulness support, right? Like I've gone through it, so I believe in it now. And it's simple exercises as an example to stay grounded. That sounds silly, but like I'm doing things like a 3-minute breathing stop every day where I not stop breathing, stop everything, practice being present and breathing exercises. Please don't stop a 3-minute breathing exercise. But where I literally, that's one exercise where, I stop and I ground by feeling the seat underneath my butt and the back of the seat behind my shoulders. And then I spend a minute of deep breaths and then a minute of deeper awareness in what am I feeling around my body, sounds, etc. Something that takes 3 minutes just keeps me so energized and focused for the rest of the day. And that's where I go back to, this would have been great to have in my earlier career as an executive, because not only would it have been better for me, but it would have been more productive for the organizations I worked for.
Yeah.
So how do you find,
well, I think,
then I'm going to stop. I can ask questions all day, but how do you find this is in adopting the value of mindfulness?
So I think one of the silver linings that's come out of the pandemic is really that there has been a lot of light shone on mental health. And a lot more people are now open to speaking about mental health, to recognize many people struggling with mental health. And I think corporations are doing that. Everybody, that term that we've all used is pivot, pivot, pivot. Going from working in the corporate field full time to then balancing working from home, and people are designing offices at kitchen tables while their toddlers are crying in the background, and attending meetings when their internet is not working. And really, I think that companies have realized, and there's a lot of reports and research that have shown, like, we need to pay attention to mental health, and it should be mental health is health. So really, it should be at the forefront of what we are striving for our employees. So that way, I think the pandemic has brought us some growth and some opportunity. And I've seen, firsthand that corporations are mindful, that they really need to do something to help support their employees. So I think that's a great start.
I should have asked this first, and then I swear I'm going to
I
let you
have a
ask some
nice list
questions.
of
I'm so
questions
excited.
already.
She's got like a dedicated list ready to go, but I'm so
I
excited
know
we
you
can
just
talk
want to
about this
keep me on
forever.
my toes.
No, it's so a couple things. And again, like I'm thinking about reach, and I know how valuable this could be. But I also know as a skeptic behind the scenes of, not asking for help when I needed it and being afraid to ask for help. And I finally got a point in my life where I needed to ask for help. And when I heard mindfulness, cognitive behavioral therapy, I thought, oh, here we go. And then, but an 8-week path was laid out of just, here's the tactical things you do to get to that space. And I could put that together as an executive to go, okay, well, here's the behavior I have to perform, and here's the result I want, which is to be healthier and a clearer mind and lose a little of this anxiety. So I got bought in that way. But the two questions I have for you based on that context is, how would you define mindfulness for people like me that 5 months ago didn't know what it was? And secondarily, what is your practice and what do you offer people?
Sure. So mindfulness really is being aware of your mind and body in the present moment. And the key here is without judgment. And it's the practice of noticing your thoughts and emotions with acceptance and learning to regulate your mind and body to find balance. So that really, there's many definitions for mindfulness, but I think that really sums up my goal in educating people about mindfulness. And it's a simple way to understand it. To kind of speak to where, you were saying, sometimes people are apprehensive, but I try to be an optimist. And like I said, I really think that people now are searching for more tools. They're looking for more tools to help them manage life. And mindfulness applications and practices can certainly help in that regard.
So what are some of those kind of more specific applications? Like you as a mindfulness coach, what are the types of things that you would teach people to be able to implement in their everyday life that's going to alleviate some of that anxiety and stress? So let's talk about that first. How would we incorporate it into everyday life? And then what pieces of that, toolbox can we then implement into the workplace to have that flow over?
For sure. So I think, most important, we should talk about the benefits. So we've covered kind of the definition of mindfulness. A lot of people might not understand what the benefits are. So mindfulness practices can really reduce anxiety. As Mark and I have mentioned, we both kind of struggle with. Use it as a stress reduction tool. It really can decrease rumination. Improve your sleep. It can give you improved emotional regulation and expression, increase focus and clarity, increased interpersonal and communication skills. It can improve cognitive function and actually change the function of your brain. It helps you also cultivate compassion and self-compassion and acceptance. It's been shown to boost your immune system function and enhance ease and positive emotions, and it gives you a greater sense of calm. So what I like to say with mindfulness in the workplace really for me is learning to respond instead of react. And what I mean by that is mindfulness practices can decrease our sympathetic nervous system, that flight or fight response, and activate our parasympathetic nervous system to induce relaxation. And this can help you change how you react to stress and lead you to feeling more in control and calm. So mindful awareness allows us to notice when we're acting in alignment with our values and the quality of our mind and emotions. And this is really when our nervous system is calm. This is our regulated state. So if we're approaching something from this state of regulation, we can respond from a regulated state. And when we become aware that our body is in this regulated state, we can then notice when we're out of alignment, when our nervous system's been hijacked, when it's not operating at its best, when, you know, we are anxious and tense. And we can use mindful applications and strategies to bring our nervous system back into regulation. So in the workplace, this really looks like being aware of your thoughts and feelings, so we're better able to respond to our coworkers instead of react, and we can recognize our own strengths and weaknesses, so we can identify where we might need to ask for extra support or where it's best to collaborate with others. So some of the practices that I would say are important to incorporate in a workplace are, first of all, this concept of unitasking. Have you guys heard of this? No.
I'm gathering from the term that it would mean like working on one thing at a time rather than multitasking,
Yes.
too many things at once.
That's right. So we're also proud of the fact that we can multitask. Yes, Jody is so smart. We all are so proud of that fact, right? We continue on and we go, you know, I'm great at multitasking. It's on my resume. I do it as a mom. I do it at home. I can do 5 things at once. But, you know, sometimes we really need to slow it down, be mindful of what we're doing, and break down the task to unitask. So what that means is that we are bringing our attention to one task at a time, and we can really complete this task by giving it 100% of our effort. And this allows us more attention to detail. In turn, we can move forward with this intention and yield better results. So one way that I personally do this, because I do love to multitask too, so this was definitely a learned skill for me, but I use time blocking. So time blocking can be a very useful strategy when you're multitasking. You know, you block out increments of time in your calendar to focus on one task at a time. And for me, I do my best work in the morning. So what I usually do is I'll block off an hour or 2 in the morning to check any urgent emails, to check my voicemails, respond to things that I need to immediately. And then following that, I'll actually turn off my notifications, send my calls to voicemail, and block out a chunk of time that I need to focus on those bigger and larger projects. We can't always do this, and you can fit this into your own schedule by going what works best for you. Maybe that's 10 or 15 minutes. But when it's possible, this mindful application can aid in completing your work with great attention to detail and focus. And really, the goal is that it helps you to prevent yourself from feeling overwhelmed and stressed with your to-do list. Another thing that I say, especially these days, working from home, is it's very important to schedule in your breaks. Like, how many times have we all sat at our desk and not even moved or gotten up? And I don't know about you, but my house is not that large. So for me to walk from here to my coffee machine or the washroom is certainly not the steps that I was used to getting when working in a corporate office environment. So we need to remember to walk away, to get outside, to get some fresh air, to take that time to really rejuvenate yourself. And I think it's especially relevant these days because we're all constantly on Teams calls or Zoom calls, or more and more meetings we're taking virtually, and we've all kind of hit this wall of fatigue. So I like to use breath work exercises, actually, are a couple of tools that I would suggest using to revitalize yourself between meetings. So breath work is really another practice that we can use to ground ourselves, release some stress and anxiety, learn to really respond instead of react to our coworkers. And there's 3 types of kind of breath work activities that I like to recommend, and maybe Mark's familiar with some of these. Deep belly breathing is a great one. When you know you're super overwhelmed, you can kind of take your hand and put it on your stomach, and just really breathe in, expand your belly, blow it up like a balloon. I know it seems counterintuitive. When I always thought of taking a deep breath, I kind of sucked my stomach in. And then I learned, wait a second, I'm supposed to expand my belly and really hit that diaphragm. And that is something that can actually trigger your nervous system in the parasympathetic nervous system to kind of slow down and take a break. So though that one, 4 by 7 8 breathing, have you heard of that, Mark? Have you done that one yet?
Yep.
So inhale for a count of 4, hold for a count of 7, exhale for a count of 8, and repeat that cycle 4 times. That's a great tool. You know, I would say even if you're feeling frustrated, even if you are looking at an email and thinking, oh my gosh, I don't even know how to respond to this one, give yourself that mindful pause and really take a break to do some breath work and activities. And another one is progressive muscle relaxation. So this one's a little bit more of a lengthy process, but it can really be done anywhere. And for myself, I'm constantly anxious, so I usually don't recognize when my body and all my muscles have been tensed. So this kind of activity really allows you to learn the feeling of these tensed muscles, first of all, and then learn how to relax the tension in your muscles so that you can identify it and you can recognize ahead of time when that anxiety is creeping in and maybe you should just step away and take a little break. So those are 3 things that I like to use, and I call those a mindful pause. And really that is learning to connect with yourself and your breath and a way of calming your nervous system and letting any tension go.
Yeah, those disciplines for me, I can speak to the value that's provided, not as an expert, but as someone who has benefited from those. And I don't call it belly breathing, I call it dad bod ab breathing, just so you know. Different definition, but it's the same thing. It's the same thing. But yeah, I do a variation that I learned called box. So it's like hold for 2, in for 4, hold for 2, out for 4, and there's all these. But what I wanted to add to your expertise there as someone who's considering this, who's hearing this for the first time, the value it provided me was giving me a discipline to be proactive about my anxiety. And so, like, yes, I bought into the program because I was getting to the point that I couldn't function with my anxiety anymore, and that got me buy-in. But once I felt like I was better, the counsel that I got was, okay, well, how do you work this into your day? How do you, because you're busy, how do you do the 3-minute breathing exercise? How do you do the body scan maybe at bedtime? And the body scan is, going through each muscle and relaxing, being aware, bringing awareness to it, releasing. And it's that discipline of having a maintenance program like anything else. Like if you physically want to stay healthy, you don't just work out at the gym when you've gotten too fat, right? And you're eating too poorly. You get back, that's your motivator, but to keep it, you got to keep eating healthy. You got to keep a routine. You got to work out. And I found for mindfulness, that's what's really helped keep my anxiety low, is that I stick with it. And it's in a program that I can continuously do. So I hope people are hearing this for the first time and learning all this great stuff that you're sharing, but also from someone like me who's like, it's worked. And I doubted it for, up until 5 months ago. And it's been a lifelong problem with me that I finally think I can manage.
And, I kind of mirror exactly what you're saying. I always thought that I was kind of up to date on approaches and stress management. And, I would exercise and I would drink water and eat healthy. And still, it seems like my anxiety just was kind of getting the best of me. And at that time, like you, I was searching for something. I was like, this is not manageable. And the great thing I think about mindfulness applications and practices is that they're your tools. They're your tools that can be personalized for what benefits you. They're something that really is used as a preventative measure to help stress and anxiety. It's a practice that if you're consistent with it, the benefits increase daily. So it's kind of like we all love the word self-care. It's learning to be disciplined and to be compassionate with yourself in saying, this is part of my routine. I need 5 minutes in the morning. Like for me, what it looks like is I wake up before my daughter in the morning. Some of the applications I use in my personal life is I'll grab my cup of coffee and I'll do my meditation in the morning. For me, when my anxiety is really high, now it's, first of all, that awareness, right? Mindfulness is really about being aware, and it's really about being in the present moment. So before I met mindfulness, I didn't have any way to identify kind of what my anxiety looked like, or maybe that it was anxiety, until it reached a level of a panic attack. And I was like, whoa, something's happening now. Like, so for me, it was being able to recognize it, number one, being aware, being curious, and to know that I had these simple tools, meditation, breath work, sleep hygiene, all of those things that I could facilitate to be in control of anxiety. So that's what I think is important to really share with people, is that number one, you have nothing to lose, and there could be practices and applications that you don't resonate with. And that's fine. Some people are like, yoga's not my thing. I can't meditate. Sure you can. There's so many ways to go about. There's guided meditations. It doesn't mean you have to be sitting cross-legged on a stool for 50 minutes a day. Really, it's finding what works for you. And I think that if we can recognize that these tools are available for stress reduction, for anxiety, to help manage life, emotions, emotional regulation. It's just such a simple thing. So I really just kind of plead with everybody, like, try something, and see the benefit. And for most people, honestly, I haven't heard anybody who has jumped into the world of mindfulness and said that they didn't get anything from it. So I just think it's a wonderful thing to have, and it's so simple.
It is. Yeah, I can vouch for that, and I'm gonna literally stop talking and stop asking questions. And let Jody, she's got her questions here. I keep jumping in. It's our show. Like, what are we doing? But bear. I'll leave you with a couple things, and I'm going to really try and back out. But I'm so fascinated by the subject because I've gone through a personal experience that I normally would not have trusted, just because I'm like, oh, well, what's that? Like, is it really going to work? And to see how easy it is to incorporate and the impact it can have, I'm like, really want to share this with more people. Having said all that, earlier in one of your responses, Mia, you mentioned the term rumination. And for me, that was a big light switch. Like when I heard the word, first of all, it took me about 9 times to pronounce it right, because I kept mixing in a rumination. But when it was explained to me from my counsel, where I'm getting counseling, psychotherapist, she had said, this is what it is. And I'm like, oh my God, I do that all the time. And that was my awareness moment of saying, I got to look for that. And that's going to be one of my red flags to look for, and then be proactive with my exercises, whichever one I pick. Can you define rumination for everyone hearing this who's not heard the term before or not aware of mindfulness?
Sure. From a non-licensed therapist's definition of rumination, for me, it's really, your brain is stuck in this thought loop that's running over and over and over and over and over again. And your brain can't get out of that thought loop. So really, when we talk about like that flight or fight response, there's also freeze in there. And that helps you when you're a deer and a lion and the lion's coming after you, and the deer is like, fight, or freeze, and he freezes, so he lies down and plays dead. I like to equate that with what I feel like my brain is doing when it's ruminating. It can't run, it can't fight, it's frozen, and it's frozen in this loop of the same thought over and over and over again. And you can't really get out of that. So a lot of times anxiety appears as that. And that, number one, is my definition for it. Number two, what has helped me get out of that thought loop is really to say, okay, what am I feeling? Let's take ourselves out of our mind and into our body, right? That mindfulness helps us do that. It helps us to ground ourselves by, I think, get out of my head and into my feet. And what am I feeling? What can I do to take care of myself in this feeling? Okay, I'm feeling scared. I'm feeling worried. I am feeling like I don't have control over the future. So what can I do to take care of myself in this feeling? It's an uncomfortable and difficult emotion. So what can I do to help me tolerate that? So number one, being aware of that feeling, recognizing it, and then saying to yourself, what can I do to make this feeling more manageable? Maybe that's exercise. Maybe that's getting outside. Maybe that's time alone, meditation, a cold shower, a bath, a hug, a good cry, some sort of self-compassion. But we really need to know how to move out of one emotion and into another so that we don't get stuck. So recognizing it is the first important step. Accepting it, right? I'm feeling this way. It's okay to feel this way because I am so scared and I don't know what to do about it. So what I can do is, now that I'm mindful of it, I can pull from these applications, these things in my toolbox that I know will help to support me a little bit more so that I don't get stuck in that feeling. So that's kind of where I land with rumination, and just in my own personal experience, what's really helped me to step away from that. Because that is kind of one of my patterns is anxiety leads to rumination.
I'm glad you mentioned that because I actually didn't know what that meant.
When you've heard me mention the word, or just
well, Mia
hearing it
mentioned
now?
it
Yeah.
earlier, so
Yeah, it was a big game. Like, it sounds silly, but it's exactly what's been causing my anxiety for years and years and years. And to Mia's point, I'm frozen with it. I know I'm there.
Yeah.
I just don't know how to get out of it.
Yeah.
And one, being aware and telling yourself it's okay.
Mm-hmm. And I know for Mark, with his anxiety, the way he struggles with it is, around things that he can't control, things that he has, no control over as his own self, is what tends to manifest itself as anxiety in your world. Like, you still do kind of get worked up about, driving in the winter, or having to be in a situation where you have to get from A to B in the middle of winter.
Yeah, we're going to peel back every layer of the onion.
I'm just saying, like, if it's flying.
I want to be open. I don't want to be like bare naked out here. Like,
flying was a big thing. It's like you're not in control of what can happen with the plane, and then the pandemic was a tough one because you're not in control of how this is effective. I was going to say that how the virus itself is spreading, but how it's affected our lives so significantly. And then I'm sure that's how you get into those rumination loops, right?
Yeah, it's exactly how you get stuck. And I think that's why I love this, and I see the benefit for people in the work environment is, like, because we're wired to do. Like, I'm wired to see there's a problem, I need to fix it, and here I go.
Yes.
And then when you get stuck with something you don't control, you get back into the loop again of saying, well, all I can do is worry about what I can't control, and you're stuck. And this is such a valuable tool. This is where I wanted to really probably thank you and ask one more question and really stop asking questions, because I don't want to open myself up anymore here today. But having said that,
here I'm giving you a blanket.
Yeah, clearly I've had a journey, and we all have. I think that's the thing that's really opened my eyes, is that we all have struggles. I get a little emotional talking about it because it's been really positive experience, but there's a lot of pain behind it, right? Anyways, where I'm going with that is, I love what you're doing because you're doing it from a mental health perspective. What you're doing is going to impact others' mental health. It's why I do the servant leadership training. I believe if I can change leadership behaviors it's going to impact the majority of people at work, which is half of their life. Now, having said that, you would hope all business owners did it for the right reason because it was going to improve mental health. But the reality is there's a significant amount of business owners who, yeah, that's important, but it better be good for the business. So how would you try and define, why organizations should transfer these skills to employees? Like, I would have loved this if someone showed me this 15 years ago when I was running BMO Field. And Chile was playing Argentina, and it was a brawl, and it was on CBC News, and I was hiding under my desk. Not literally, but pretty close. These are behaviors I could have dealt with. How do you get businesses to understand that it's good for business because it's good for their people? I feel like that's the only way we impact change in the workplace.
Well, I think that really it goes to mentality. I think that if your employees are engaged, if your employees are healthy and happy, the production, the benefit, the, being married to their job, so to say, only increases. When you show an employee their worth, when you show them that you accept them, that we recognize we're all human and we all have struggles. I think the more you give to an employee, the more an employee gives back, and that's really the key. And I think, again, I can't stress it enough, one of the good things that has come out of the pandemic is this open field to now let's address and talk about mental health the same way we would have physical health, right? We all talk about short-term disability or long-term disability, or, you have a broken leg or what have you. I really feel like prior to this, people were sort of in a mindset of hiding behind the scenes, or just pushing through, going to work after you have had a panic attack, being like, I have to do this, or not wanting to say to someone, because you've carried some stigma or maybe shame around that. I really think that what the pandemic has given us is an eye-opener, and kind of now this new avenue to talk about, discuss, and promote mental health and wellness as a whole, right? It's not like you can only be a corporate executive. Now it's like, no, you can be a corporate executive, have self-care and compassion, add mindfulness practices, be a mother, be a father, be single. It's this holistic approach that really now we're putting out there in the world. We're not just one person. There's all these facets to us. So I really do think that corporations and businesses have, in one way or another, shed some light or been forced to see that this is now, I hope, the way that we're doing business moving forward is going to be a little bit more like this.
Hope so. By the way, I found out what happened with the technology. Just so anybody watching the replay now who went to the forum, the first time we've done this live by bringing a guest on, this is being posted from your personal profile right now.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah,
I said that. And
anyway. We got to fix that. So you're watching this replay after it seems all smooth. We had a little hiccup in the first 15 minutes.
To your point, Mia, I think especially like the pandemic has kind of opened or like pulled back the curtains on the fact that, or on what people's home life is like and how they balance it with their work life. Because with us all working at home, many of our colleagues got to see what our home life was like. I know for us, It was like we had kids hopping on a Zoom call, and we had dogs barking, and we had, it's like, I don't know, it kind of felt like it was more of like the rounded out experience of our whole life, together. So maybe that's something that's been a bonus out of all this. That's not just work,
It was more of a connection.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then the other thing I wanted to touch on is I think a lot of people, because mindfulness is kind of a buzz term right now, right? Like it's around a lot, you hear it a lot. And I think for most people, they immediately think, okay, it's about meditation and relaxing yourself and things like that. And I think that people assume it's going to take a lot of time out of their day to start to kind of implement these practices, or to try to build their own kind of mindfulness practice. And I think what's resonating with me out of what you said is that you can actually fit it into the little pockets of your day that you have time for, and it can be a few minutes at a time. It doesn't mean you have to do a full hour-long meditation, but even 5 minutes in the morning might change the course of your day.
Absolutely. And even stepping out for 5 minutes to go for a walk. Again, it's being in the present moment, not getting caught up in the past, not worrying about the future, learning to drop yourself into the present moment. And you can do that when you have 5 minutes to go for a walk. You can say, okay, it's as simple as this. Like, I am not going to check my phone when I'm going for a walk. I am, not going to respond or think about anything. I'm going to look down at my feet and watch it crunching on the snow. Or it's just so many, it's really that awareness. How many times have we driven somewhere and we thought about, oh no, I forgot to take out something for dinner. My first meeting is at 10 o'clock. Shoot, I forgot to write that progress report. Oh my gosh, Emma has soccer, and we've got to where we're going and we don't remember how we got there.
Mm-hmm.
You don't remember if you stopped at that red light. You don't remember if somebody was driving so close behind you. You don't remember the song on the radio. You don't remember the weather, the trees outside. I like to say that our mind is literally full. You're not being mindful. Your mind is full. It's full of all of these thoughts. So if we can learn to slow down and strip that back, those are the tiny moments that mindfulness can prove to be beneficial. You're giving yourself that space to just be. And really, that is a great stress reduction, anxiety, rumination, all of that. It's those pockets of moments, like you said, that you can build upon consistently that gives you a practice. And your practice will look different than mine practice. So that's the great thing about it.
I think some of the exercise teach, in the practice will teach you how to appreciate life a little more. Like, a simple, silly one that they taught me early was 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And you had to observe 5 things. What are you seeing? And then what are the 4 things you're hearing? What are the 3 things that you're feeling? What are the 2 things that you smell? And what's the 1 thing that you can taste? And it literally changes the way you walk. Like you said, I remember walking through the neighborhood when we moved to Wasagamie, and I'm like, I don't feel like I've ever seen the neighborhood until I practiced that. And I'm like, oh my God, look at the greenery, look at the, but it's silly, but it changes your life, and it helps you appreciate it and forget about work for a moment, forget about the practice. Think about being truly present with your kids. And hearing them.
And that's a great activity that actually works well with kids. That 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, our kids, and I don't know about you, they are having big emotions and not knowing how to express these big emotions. And, that exercise, like, okay, let's calm down. Let's shift for a second. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Tell me those 5 things you see, hear, feel, taste, smell. And that helps kids kind of regulate those big emotions. That also helps a very anxious person if they're like, all the way up to here and feeling like they're, okay, I'm at the point of maybe having a panic attack. What do I need to do? What's in my surroundings right now? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Another great one I use with my daughter is mountain breathing. She's very overwhelmed, or she can't sleep, or really, mindfulness is teaching you the tools to learn that emotional regulation, to give you that outlet. And it's just kind of like, breathe in and go over the mountain, and out and up and down, and it's breath work. But it just allows you that space, right? That space to take a step back and just ground yourself, and to know, like, we're not pushing thoughts away. There's no way for you to not have thoughts in your head. There's no way for our emotions to go away either. That's not the goal of mindfulness. It's just to bring awareness to them and recognize them and then let them pass. That's really the goal. And my goal is to really help people learn and develop practices to put into a toolbox to use at times when we're feeling overwhelmed or anxious or stressed. And mindfulness gives us those practices, including the ones we've talked about. I mean, we haven't talked about many of them, but we can really, if we continue these practices daily, we can train and build up new pathways in our brain to cultivate a positive framework, and to cultivate calm. So that's my goal as a mindfulness educator, is really to share and to educate people on mindfulness practices and help them to develop their own toolbox.
Amazing. Well, I know we're approaching the end of our little session here, and I know we started late, but I really want to make sure that we give people some information about you, Mia, and your business. How can people reach out to you? Or I guess maybe I should start with, what kind of services do you offer within your business that might be helpful? I know you've done some corporate workshops and things like that, so that might be something that as an employer people would be interested in. I know for us it aligns so well with our business and what we were talking about before. We're super passionate about, the more you put into your employees, the more you're going to get out of them from an engagement perspective and a loyalty perspective and that kind of thing. So if employers provide services like this that really make employees feel like they're being, invested in, that they're worthy and all those things, I just think it can increase in, loyalty and productivity. So there's the corporate workshops, but then can people work with you one-on-one if they want to know how to implement this into their everyday life?
Yeah, so right now I'm not currently offering one-on-one sessions, but I do have a lot of online courses that are coming out for purchase, and currently working on corporate, group, and public workshops. So that's where I'm leading from today. You can certainly reach out to me on my website at www.miawhite.ca, as well as on Instagram at Mia White Mindfulness, or feel free to send me a message there or email. So mindfulness@miawhite.ca. But really, like I said, that this really advocating for mental health and wellness is really what drives me. Seeing the difference that mindfulness has made in my own life is really what leads me to want to share this and educate people. So, and I thank you both so much for having me on today. It was a pleasure. And yeah, I just couldn't be happier.
Thank you. Well, I actually think it's probably a little bit less intimidating for some people to join a group session than it is to reach out one-on-one. So I think that's a great approach to kind of bring people together.
Absolutely. And you can really reach, I think now people are looking for that connection. So in a group setting, it offers that kind of connection, and from an educator's perspective, you can reach more people at one time in a group setting than you can one-on-one. So that's kind of where my focus is now. Having said that, I mean, that could possibly change in the future, but right now that's kind of where my focus is at.
Fabulous. Is there anything else you would like to add?
Just thank you. Thank you for doing this. And honestly, thank you for doing what you do. From someone who's really benefited, not going through it with you, and certainly would have it, I have known, and you offered it one-on-one, but having gone through someone teaching me this stuff has really impacted my life. So thank you for doing that for other people.
Yes. Thank you, guys.
Okay. We will share this video where we can. Talk to you soon.
All right. Take care.